The body of Pope Francis has entered St. Peter's Basilica and is now lying in state after the liturgy of the word has ended. Donald Trump has now stated that high tariff on goods from China will come down substantially, although they won't be zero. And in Palestine, an NGO denounced that Israel's renewed military offensive on the Gaza Strip has made the delivery of humanitarian aid impossible, paralyzing any form of assistance. Hello and welcome to From the South, from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. My name is Pablo Micheliche. We begin with the news, so stay with us. The body of Pope Francis has entered St. Peter's Basilica after being carried across St. Peter's Square and is now lying in state after the liturgy of the word has ended. The procession, which lasted just under 40 minutes, saw the transfer of the body of Pope Francis from his residence in Santa Marta, passing through St. Peter's Square and concluding at St. Peter's Basilica. Cardinal Camerlengo Kevin Farrell has just completed the liturgy of the word, and he and others read from sections of the Bible. We met with occasional responses from the congregation. Cardinals are now paying their personal respects to the late Pope as crowds filter from seats outside in St. Peter's Square. Pope Francis' body is now inside at St. Peter's Basilica, where he will be lying in state until his funeral on Saturday. Latin America held a special place in Pope Francis' agenda, with 7 trips that included 10 countries in the region. His first international trip was to Brazil shortly after his election, and his last Latin American visit was to Panama in January 2019. Let's see more.
Francis, the first pope in history born in Latin America, had in this region some of the priorities of his pontificate, but he also found enormous challenges and limitations. During his visit to Cuba, Francis met with Commander Fidel Castro. Although it was a private meeting, it was an important moment because of his strong condemnation of the U.S. blockade against the island. The Supreme Pontiff also played a key role in the diplomatic rapprochement between Havana and Washington. During his visit to Brazil, the Pope criticized the inaction of the clergy, called for the recovery of the faithful, and asked Catholics to go to the favelas of the cities, one of which he visited on that occasion. With gestures such as his support for peace in the region, Pope Francis gave the Vatican a leading role in peace negotiations such as the case of Colombia to seek an end to the armed conflict that plagues the country. Francis toured the Bolivian cities of El Alto, La Paz, and Santa Cruz. In this country, the Pope spoke of the sea and asked forgiveness for the oppression against indigenous peoples. In the midst of a serious political and economic crisis resulting from the U.S. blockade against Venezuela, the Pope took steps to establish a dialogue between the government of Nicolas Maduro and the opposition. Bergoglio took over the leadership of a church with great challenges and crises, 2 of which directly involved Latin America: the fall in the number of faithful and sexual abuse scandals within the church.
We change topic. The Venezuelan Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement to demand the release of Venezuelan migrants kidnapped in El Salvador, and further note that the Salvadorian Foreign Ministry confessed Tuesday an array of unlawful actions labeled as international crimes. The ministry denounced the violation of its national human rights as they were being arbitrarily deprived of their freedom, detained without judicial order or prior trial in a maximum security prison center, subjected to degrading and inhumane conditions, which the statement described as a very serious crime of human trafficking. The ministry further denounced the collective criminalization and institutional xenophobia by attributing without individual evidence the link between the detainees and transitional criminal organization already dismantled in Venezuela, in open violation of the principle of presumption of innocence. The authority finally condemned the moral intentions of trying to impose a prisoner swap in these conditions and described the situation as a legal aberration of bilateral relations. In this context, relatives of migrants kidnapped in El Salvador opposed Nayib Bukele's proposal for a swap, as their relatives are not criminals.
It is unheard of that they're going to exchange people in this case. At least our boys, at least the majority of those boys are innocent. My son is an innocent person. They cannot exchange him as a criminal for another person who is in prison somewhere else here in Venezuela. And they may have some process, but my son does not really have any process, and he does not need to be exchanged for anyone, okay? He needs his freedom because he is not a criminal.
Él necesita su libertad porque él no es ningún delincuente.
Mira, no, yo por lo menos no lo acepto porque...
I do not accept it. That is, many mothers will say yes to force Maduro. No, it is not like that, because at least our children, nor mine, are not delinquents, and we are not going to receive them like this. Take your politicians, and you take your delinquents. No, they are not delinquents.
Como que toma tu político y toma tu delincuente, no. No.
Likewise, the relative of migrants kidnapped in El Salvador said that President Nayib Bukele's proposal is evidence that he is carrying out a kidnapping.
Nosotros como madre podríamos decir, oh, una esperanza.
We as mothers could say or hope that there was a pronouncement. However, later on, calmer and calmer, I understood that this is not the way it should be, because in his letter, he openly explains that he wants to make a change for criminals, for people of the Aragua train. Our relatives are not criminals. They are innocent people. There in his proposal, it is evident that it is a kidnapping. He is the person who is executing this kidnapping, because it is a kidnapping, because there is no official list, there is no name of the people who are there. We have not had any communication with our relatives.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On another sharp turn of events, Donald Trump has now stated that high tariff on goods from China will come down substantially, although they won't be zero. During a White House news conference, Trump stated that the final tariff would not be near the current 145%, which he described as too high. The remarks come after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent declared that the high tariffs were unsustainable and that he hoped for a trade war de-escalation, as the Asian giant had countered with 125% tariff on U.S. goods. With the new possibility of a deal on the table, the markets have shown positive signs following great uncertainty as investors worry about slower economy and inflation.
That's true. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to that. We were talking about fentanyl, where various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. It used to be zero. We were just destroyed. China was...
In this context, the U.S. President also highlighted that they plan to be very nice to China and are hoping to reach a deal.
We're going to be very nice. They're going to be very nice. And we'll see what happens. But ultimately, they have to make a deal, because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States. So we want them involved, but they have to, and other countries have to make a deal. And if they don't make a deal, we'll set the deal, because we're the ones that set the deal. Scott and Howard and myself and others, we're going to be setting the deal, and it'll be a fair deal for everybody, and it'll be... I think it's a process that's going to go pretty quickly. We've spoken to...
U.S. former Vice President Al Gore sharply criticized President Donald Trump during a speech in San Francisco, accusing him of dismantling U.S. efforts to fight climate change and undermining the country's democracy. Speaking at the opening of San Francisco Climate Week, the 77-year-old Nobel Peace Prize winner warned that the Trump administration's rollback of environmental protections and support for the fossil fuel industry posed an existential threat to both the planet and the democratic institutions. Gore urged citizens to resist what he described as a coordinated effort to halt progress on clean energy and erode democratic norms. Drawing a historical parallel, he cautioned against the manipulation of truth by those in power, emphasizing the importance of defending both climate action and the foundation of democracy.
We've already seen, by the way, how populist authoritarian leaders have used migrants as scapegoats and have fanned the fires of xenophobia to fuel their own rise to power. And power seeking is what this is all about. Our Constitution, written by our founders, is intended to protect us against a threat identical to Donald Trump, someone who seeks power at all costs to get more power.
We stay in the United States. San Francisco unions and community members rallied on Tuesday to protest Airbnb's lawsuit against the city as an attempt to avoid taxes. The demonstration was held outside the local courthouse during an Airbnb court hearing in which the tech company seeks a refund on about $120 million in previously paid business taxes, claiming it was overcharged by the city. In this context, unions called on Airbnb to drop the lawsuit and pay their fair share to the district. The activists claim the city should be able to use the money set aside for businesses' tax litigations to reduce the need for job cuts and improve services.
We want Airbnb to pay their fair share of taxes because their taxes pay for the public services that we all depend on here. Our public transportation system, our libraries, our parks, our homelessness services, and our public health. If they don't pay their share of taxes, then we, the public, will pay for it.
Airbnb step up and do its due diligence. Drop the lawsuit, pay their taxes like every citizen in this city so that we can have the resources we need to take care of the cities and our communities.
And we have a second short break coming up. And before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you will be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Financial break, stay tuned with teleSUR. Welcome back. The Colombian government formalized on April 22 the questionnaire of questions that will be part of the popular consultation on the labor reform that will be delivered to the Colombian Senate next May 1st for discussion and voting. Our correspondent Hernán Tobar tells us the details.
El gobierno colombiano oficializó las 12 interrogantes.
The Colombian government made official the 12 questions that will be part of the popular consultation on the labor reform that was rejected in the Colombian Congress. Vindicating workers' rights and recovering the lost legitimacy are some of the elements included in the questions that were read by the Minister of Labor.
¿Está de acuerdo con que el trabajo de día dure máximo 8 horas?
Do you agree that the workday should last a maximum of 8 hours and should be between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.? Yes or no? Secondly, do you agree that a 100% surcharge should be paid for work on a Sunday or holiday rest day? Yes or no? Thirdly, do you agree that micro, small, and medium productive enterprises, preferably associative, should receive preferential rates and incentives for their productive projects? Yes or no?
Tasas preferenciales e incentivos para sus proyectos productivos.
El ministro del Interior, que también acudió a este anuncio,
The Minister of the Interior, who also attended this announcement, recalled the motivations that drove the first president of Colombia to seek solutions to the legislative blockage that prevented the advancement and discussion of transcendental reforms that were part of the political project with which Gustavo Petro was elected.
Todo empieza porque unas personas que no tenían.
It all starts because some people who did not have to sign the report signed in denying the debate, as I had never seen before in the Congress of the Republic.
Ese día el presidente de la República decide.
That day, the President of the Republic decides to go to the people to make a consultation on the labor reform. There is a sentence.
Hay una sentencia, la 180 del.
The number 180 of the year 94 of the Constitutional Court that says that when there is a conflict between the legislature and the executive, it is settled by a consultation.
Y el Ejecutivo dirime una consulta.
Ahora serán los legisladores que componen el Senado.
Now it will be the legislators composing the Senate who will have to determine in plenary in a maximum of 30 days their endorsement regarding the questions formulated. For their approval, 55 votes are required for a total of 108 senators, and the consultation can be carried out.
We hope that the Senate does not interfere in this popular consultation. Once the Senate approves within the next 4 months, the registry has to set a date to hold the elections, and people have to vote yes or no to each of the 12 questions. The votes are counted individually, question by question.
Hoy la consulta popular es un mandato del pueblo.
Today, the popular consultation is a mandate of the people. Therefore, the Senate of the Republic has to comply with the popular mandate as it is stated in the political constitution of Colombia. A referendum is the result of a popular mandate. Therefore, what it has to do is to give it the necessary procedures so that these questions are formalized and carried out.
Se garantice la participación.
El presidente colombiano anunció que el próximo.
The Colombian president announced that on May 1st, he himself will submit the questionnaire of the popular consultation on labor reform to the presidency of the Senate, so that it may begin its discussion and processing.
Hernán Darío Tobar Gaitán, TeleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
The organization Oxfam Intermon has announced that Israel's renewed military offensive on the Gaza Strip has made the delivery of humanitarian aid impossible, paralyzing any form of assistance. According to the NGO, this situation has created a nightmare for 500,000 people who are trapped in insecure and inaccessible areas, with more than 70% of the population deprived of water, food, and essential medicines. Health authorities in Gaza confirmed that the lack of resources has led to the death of 17 children from cold and 52 from starvation, reflecting the collapse of the health system and critical shortages of medical supplies. The Israeli blockade has prevented the entry of trucks carrying food, drinking water, fuel, and medicine, while ongoing attacks have destroyed vital infrastructure, including desalination plants and health centers. Family members and colleagues of the 15 emergency responders that were killed by Israel in Gaza last month have spoken out about the attack that sparked international outrage, calling for an independent investigation. On March 23rd, an ambulance convoy departed from Khan Yunis towards Rafah in southern Gaza to rescue civilians trapped under bombardment, but the convoy never reached its intended destination and disappeared without a trace. Days later, 15 emergency workers were found murdered and buried in a mass grave. While Israel has stated there was no cover-up of the scene, refusing external proof, the rescue organizations demand a special investigation and alert about a clear breach of international law.
They shot them in the head. Then they buried them with bulldozers. They didn't even let us see them.
We shared images of all our vehicles and uniforms through the ICRC. But that didn't spare our teams from being targeted. We are officially demanding through the UN Security Council a special investigation into the cold-blooded killings of our medical workers.
The international humanitarian law guarantees the protection of civilians, including international organization personnel, as well as workers at the civil society, as long as they are not part of the conflict. These all kind of attacks are impeding the ability to continue the humanitarian mission that is dedicated primarily to alleviate the suffering of the affected population by armed conflicts, and in many cases, life-saving situations.
Now in Cuba, the defense of the Palestinian cause is still present with messages of hope and resistance. In Havana, the International Biennial of Graphic Humor, held under the slogan "Less Fake and More News," opens the Gaza exhibition. Let's see.
The fact that these images of solidarity were filmed in Havana is no coincidence. It happens that this island and Palestine have an enemy in common. The same enemy that finances the genocide and occupation of the Palestinian people is the same one that has blockaded Cuba for more than 60 years.
With the participation of design students and workers of our institute, we are making this mural in a public place as a voice of resistance. All the people who pass by here will be inspired by this image to learn more about the Palestinian cause and to be sensitized with one of the causes that at this moment marks the humanity.
For Cubans, the Palestinian cause is the most urgent one that humanity is experiencing. Before the eyes of the world, a genocide is taking place, an ethnic cleansing with total impunity. They are students of the Higher Institute of Industrial Design, and they paint another mural in the streets of Havana.
The idea is always to draw people's attention, and art is always good for that, to make people question themselves, to ask what is going on. What is this all about, because we are talking about Palestine?
We hope this will help to communicate and raise awareness for the cause.
Solidarity is always necessary, and that the Palestinians can see that the world is with them.
In an international biennial of graphic humor, such as the one taking place in Cuba these days, Palestine, Gaza could not be missing. This collective exhibition, curated by Fadi Abu Hassan and Aristides Hernandez, is open to the public at the iconic corner of 23rd and 12th.
My work reflects the loss of the family. Sometimes the parents are not there because of the war, or the parents lose their children. Also because the massacre of the children in that territory is horrendous. And it is our way of denouncing to the world the sadness that is happening in Gaza. We are hopeful that someday this war, this massacre will end and there will be peace in the Palestinian territory.
This is a caricature, but it is political satire. The one who thinks in caricature always thinks in the edge of the comical. Here is humor. But the subject is so hard that it is not an exhibition to laugh, but to reflect on the issue of Gaza, Palestine violence, and the image that is here are some posters that serve to denounce what is happening with that people.
60 works by 58 artists from 30 countries. The graphic humorists of the world raise from Havana a banner of resistance and combat against war, lies, and disinformation.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and you can also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, my name is Pablo Michelich. Thank you for watching.